Have you ever felt that piercing sensation? Not just the sting of a careless word, but the unmistakable strike of someone who knew exactly where your softest place was and chose to wound you there? It isn't the slip of a tongue or a fleeting moment of anger. It's deliberate, it's calculated. And when it happens, it feels less like an accident and more like a knife in the back from someone you trusted to guard it. In those moments, the pain is undeniable. But the greatest danger is not the wound itself. It's what you allow that wound to shape inside you. Because cruelty can do more than break your trust. If you react blindly, it can twist you into someone bitter, someone hardened, someone you barely recognize. That is the deeper cost. Not just what they did, but what you risk becoming if you let their action dictate your response. And here's the promise. This journey will not hand you easy answers, nor will it pretend the pain isn't real. Instead, it will guide you through the fire without letting the fire define you. It will help you transform betrayal into clarity, rejection into resilience, and cruelty into calm power. This is the Stoic path, not about suppressing your emotions, but about refusing to become a mirror of someone else's chaos. If these words already resonate, let me invite you to make a simple declaration. Subscribe to True Stoic Way and join a community of men and women committed to mastering themselves through ancient wisdom and daily practice. And in the comments, type, "I choose peace." Think of it not as typing words into a box, but as a quiet contract with yourself. Because this story truly begins with a single question. Will you allow their strike to deform you, or will you let it refine you? Every betrayal, every calculated insult, leaves you standing at a crossroads. Not the kind you see on a map, but the invisible one inside your chest. The choice isn't about what they did. That's already carved into the past. The choice is about who you will become in response. Marcus Aurelius captured this with a line that at first sounds almost impossible. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. On the surface, it feels dismissive, as if he's saying to deny reality. But that's not what he meant. He wasn't telling us to pretend the wound isn't real. He was reminding us of something deeper, that the raw event and your inner narrative about it are two different things. The insult exists, but whether it becomes your master is still your decision. Think about the reflex most aggressors expect. They're counting on your explosion. They crave the spectacle of your anger, the collapse of your dignity, the loss of your control. Their entire script depends on you stepping into the role they've written, the outraged victim. And when you don't play along, when your stillness meets their chaos, that's when their power crumbles. Nothing unsettles someone who strikes harder than a target that refuses to flinch. Picture this scene. A man is publicly confronted, humiliated in front of a crowd. The aggressor sharpens his words like knives, hoping to see a crack, a reaction, a rise. But instead of rage, the man stands straight, his face calm, his breath steady. He listens, then replies softly, "If you need to wound me to feel powerful, I'm sorry. That must be the only way you can." And then, without another word, he walks away. No fight, no collapse, just dignity that echoes louder than any insult. This isn't weakness. This is mastery. The aggressor wanted his fire. Instead, he was met with stone. The strength wasn't in defeating the enemy. It was in refusing to become like him. So how do we reach that point, when everything in us wants to lash back? The Stoics would say, begin small, with the body. Breath before battle. When the insult lands, don't react. Inhale. 3 slow breaths. That pause is a blade that cuts the chain between stimulus and reaction. Then, name the emotion without shame. This is anger. This is hurt. By naming, you separate yourself from it. You are not anger. Anger is visiting you. And finally, ask one piercing question. Does this moment deserve the future version of me I'm building? Most of the time the answer is no, and in that no you find your clarity. This isn't about denying pain. It's about denying it the right to sculpt you into something smaller. It's about claiming sovereignty over your own reactions. Because once you realize that no one can pull you into their chaos without your consent, you hold the highest form of power. If you're practicing this right now, if you've tried the 3-breath reset in your own life, hit like on this video so I know to create a short guided audio you can use in the heat of the moment. Sometimes, 60 seconds of calm is all it takes to change the outcome of a lifetime. The truth is simple but not easy. You can't control what others do, but you can always choose who you become in response. That's the decision in front of you. Will you let their strike deform you or refine you? And from this foundation of calm choice, we move to the next stage of power, the kind that looks cold to outsiders, but is in fact pure sovereignty. Stoic indifference. When people hear the word indifference, they often mistake it for coldness. They imagine a person who no longer feels, someone detached, icy, unreachable. But Stoic indifference is nothing like that. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of sovereignty. To be indifferent in the Stoic sense means you stop letting other people's chaos dictate the climate of your inner world. It's not about avoiding life. It's about refusing to bleed for games that were never worth playing. Think of a friend who betrays your trust. The natural impulse is to chase explanations, confront them, demand accountability. But the Stoic path offers another option. One man, after discovering years of lies from someone he once called a brother, chose something unexpected. Instead of engaging in endless arguments or attempts to expose the betrayal, he went silent. Not because he was afraid, but because he saw the truth. The only way to win a rigged game is to walk off the board. He withdrew his energy, stopped fueling the fire, and carried himself with dignity. His silence was not weakness. It was a declaration. You no longer own real estate in my soul. This is the heart of Stoic indifference. It is not tolerating abuse. It is not pretending nothing happened. It is the decision to stop pouring energy into a vessel with no bottom. It is stepping out of the theater of conflict and reclaiming your time, your attention, your peace. To practice this, remember the 3 I's. Inventory. Take stock of where your energy is leaking. Which conversations, memories, or conflicts drain you most? Intention. Decide consciously where your energy will go instead. Toward building, not bleeding. Interruption. Cut the loops that keep dragging you back. That might mean silence, distance, or a calm refusal to keep explaining yourself to someone who has no interest in listening. Indifference, then, is not apathy. Apathy says, I feel nothing. Indifference says, I choose not to hand you control over how I feel. It is the ultimate act of possession, of owning yourself so completely that no one else's drama can rent space inside you. Here's the paradox. People who hurt you expect rage, tears, and reaction. That's their fuel. When they receive nothing, not even the dignity of your attention, they are forced to face the emptiness of their own actions. And in that silence, their imagined power collapses. So the next time you're tempted to react, ask yourself, is this my sovereignty or my servitude? Will my reaction free me or bind me tighter to their shadow? If you understand this difference, do me a favor. Comment indifference, apathy below. I'll pin the sharpest reflections because these words need to be carved into our collective memory. True Stoic indifference is not escape, it's mastery. It's not the freezing of your heart, it's the reclaiming of your soul. And once you stop being a puppet to other people's strings, you arrive at the next great paradox, that the highest form of freedom is found in 2 acts that seem opposed, but in truth belong together: forgiveness and walking away. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." At first glance, it sounds simple, almost too simple, but hidden inside is a radical truth. When you respond to cruelty with cruelty, you don't punish your enemy. You transform yourself into a reflection of him, and that is the deepest loss of all. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not about excusing what was done. It is not an invitation for the offender to return. It is not pretending the wound never happened. Forgiveness is a quiet act of liberation. You remove the hook that keeps you bound to their shadow. You say, "I release myself from needing your remorse to move forward." That is the first freedom. The second freedom is walking away. Because forgiveness without distance still leaves the door unlocked. To walk away is to guard the peace you have reclaimed. It is not bitterness. It is not punishment. It is a declaration that your well-being is too valuable to be negotiated with someone who has already shown they cannot honor it. I once heard a story of a man who loved his friend like a brother. Over the years, that friend chipped away at his trust, with lies, manipulation, subtle insults wrapped in jokes. Again and again he forgave. Each time he told himself loyalty demanded another chance. But one day he realized the truth. By staying, he was no longer loyal to his friend. He was betraying himself. So he stopped. He forgave, but he also left. He said later, "I didn't leave because I hated him. I left because I could no longer betray myself in the name of loyalty." That sentence holds more strength than any shout of revenge ever could. Seneca warned, "He who seeks revenge harms himself." Revenge is like placing your hand into a fire, waiting for the flames to burn the other person. All it does is consume you. By clinging to rage, you don't scorch your enemy. You incinerate your own peace. To forgive and walk away is to choose dignity over drama. It is to understand that every hour spent resenting someone is stolen from your purpose. Every conversation replayed, every imaginary argument rehearsed, is a theft from your future. And you, more than anyone, deserve better. So let's be clear, forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It is unhooking yourself. Walking away is not defeat. It is the only strategy that guarantees victory over bitterness. Together, they form a double freedom. The freedom of the heart and the freedom of the path ahead. If you've ever chosen to walk away with dignity, not in hate but in peace, I invite you to share your story in just 2 sentences in the comments. Someone else scrolling today may need to hear exactly what you learned. Because when you forgive and walk away, you stop carrying their weight. And in that release, you create space for something greater to enter. Yet, even with this clarity, many of us remain stuck. Not because we still want revenge, but because deep down, we're waiting for something we may never receive. An apology. And that is the next breaking point we must face. There are few chains heavier than waiting for an apology that never comes. You replay the words, the betrayal, the breaking of trust, hoping that if they just admitted they're wrong, the weight would finally fall off your chest. But Stoicism reminds us of a hard truth. Closure is not delivered by others, it is claimed by us. Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." The betrayal is real. The insult happened. But the way you carry it, that's the battlefield. 2 people can experience the same wound. One becomes consumed by bitterness, the other learns to walk free. The difference is not the event, it's the decision. One of the simplest but most powerful tools for closure is what I call the letter you never send. Take out a page, pour everything onto it. The pain, the rage, the questions, the words you wish you could throw back at them. Write until there is nothing left unsaid, and then fold it. Place it in a drawer or burn it if you must. The act is not for them, it's for you. You don't need their ears to release your heart. But remember this, forgiveness does not mean access. Too many confuse kindness with submission. They think forgiving means opening the door for more harm, as if being gentle also means being unguarded. That is not Stoic wisdom. Forgiveness is releasing yourself from the poison. But access, that's a privilege. And privileges are earned, not owed. When you close the door, you are not being cruel. You are being clear. The Stoic path does not call us to tolerate repeated wounds. It calls us to preserve our dignity, to value our inner fortress enough that we no longer hand the keys to someone who has proven unworthy. So closure is not the apology you're waiting for. It's the vow you make. I will no longer let what they did define how I walk through life. That vow can be spoken in silence, written in a letter, or carried in your breath. But it must come from you. If you'd like me to create a simple template for this exercise, a letter you don't send guide, drop the word letter in the comments. Sometimes all we need is a safe structure to pour out the words we've been holding for years. Because closure is not their gift to give, it is your decision to make. And once you make it, the grip of their shadow weakens. But making that choice once is not enough. The sting will return. Memories creep back. Healing isn't a single act, it is a discipline, which means closure may begin in a moment, but true freedom is built day after day. And that takes us to the next chapter. If closure is a decision, then healing is a daily practice. Healing is often pictured as a single breakthrough moment. The tears fall, the heart opens, and suddenly you're free. But the reality is less dramatic and far more demanding. Healing isn't one scene, it is a discipline. It's not about a single decision. It's about choosing again and again, freedom over pride, clarity over resentment. Every day presents an invitation. Will you carry yesterday's wound into today, or will you set it down? Some days setting it down feels natural. Other days, the temptation to pick it back up is overwhelming. That's why healing must be practiced, not assumed. One way to make this practice real is through small rituals. Rituals anchor the mind when emotions would otherwise drift. They give structure to what feels shapeless. In the morning, begin with a single declaration. I don't need their justice, I need my clarity. Say it out loud. Whisper it to yourself. Write it in your journal if you must. This statement shifts your focus from what you can't control, their apology, their recognition, to what you can, your own steadiness. At night, practice what I call an energy inventory. Before you sleep, ask yourself, where did I spend my energy today? What drained me? What fed me? Then, gently return the energy that doesn't belong to you. Imagine giving back the weight of other people's choices. Picture placing it outside your room before you close your eyes. That simple visualization can lighten a burden you've carried for years. But beware the trap of nostalgia. The mind loves to wander back to what was lost, replaying old conversations, twisting the knife with what-ifs. It feels like searching for answers, but in truth, it's just pressing harder against a jagged stone. The more you push, the deeper the cut. Healing doesn't come from reliving. It comes from releasing. Remember this. Healing isn't about erasing the story. It's about refusing to let the story own you. Each day you choose peace over pride. You build muscles of resilience. Each time you practice your ritual, you remind yourself that your power is not behind you. It's within you. If this resonates, save this video as your personal reset ritual. The next time you feel yourself being pulled backward into the shadows of memory, come back here. Use these words as a compass pointing you forward, because healing is not about returning to who you were before the wound. It's about rising into someone stronger, clearer, freer. And once your strength begins to return, a new question arises, not about what lies behind, but about where you're going next. Moving forward does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending the betrayal never happened or erasing the scar from your memory. To move forward in the Stoic sense is to acknowledge what was real, but to refuse to let it dictate who you are becoming. You carry the lesson, not the wound. Too many people stay trapped because they confuse memory with identity. They think, if I let this go, it means it didn't matter. But the truth is the opposite. What happened shaped you, but it doesn't have to keep shaping you. A scar on the skin remains, but it no longer bleeds. It is proof that healing happened, not proof that pain still rules. Consider the story of a woman who lost everything she built to someone she trusted, her business, her reputation, her sense of worth. For months she replayed every detail, hoping she could rewrite the betrayal with logic. The more she searched for reasons, the heavier she became. One morning she stood in front of the mirror, hollow and exhausted, and whispered, "They took what I had. I will not let them take who I am." That sentence changed the trajectory of her life. From that moment on, she stopped waiting for justice and started writing her own future. She didn't erase the betrayal. She reframed it. Instead of carrying it as a wound, she carried it as a lesson. Never again would she hand her power so easily. Never again would she confuse charm with character. And slowly, she began again. Not loudly, not vengefully, but with quiet, deliberate steps into a life untouched by her betrayer's shadow. Seneca once wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." The hardest dare of all is this, refusing to be defined by ruins. Anyone can become bitter. Anyone can build walls so high that no one ever enters again. But to move forward with openness, clarity, and courage, that is true audacity. Yes, the wound remains in your story, but you are no longer its prisoner. You stop circling the same grief. You stop staring at the rubble as if staring long enough might rebuild it. Instead, you begin to plant something new in the ground that was cleared. You begin to build not what was, but what could be. But that's the essence of moving forward, to shift from "why did this happen" to "what will I do now?" The first question keeps you chained to the past. The second hands you back your pen. So the challenge I give you is simple. When the old wound whispers, when the memory tempts you to reopen what is closed, pause and ask, am I carrying the wound or the lesson? Only one will help you rise. If you're ready to anchor this mindset, comment "lesson greater than wound" below. Let those words serve as your reminder that you are more than what happened to you. Because moving forward is not erasing the pain. It's declaring that the pain will not have the final word. And when you live from that declaration, you open the door to something deeper still. The alchemy of turning suffering itself into strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It's one of the most famous Stoic principles, not because it sounds poetic, but because it contains the blueprint for resilience. Life will not clear your path. It will place obstacles directly on it. And the question is never, how do I avoid them? But how do I use them? Imagine this. A man built his life around a trusted business partner, someone he believed was loyal, honest, dependable. Years of effort, energy, and shared vision. Then one day, he discovered that the partner had been stealing, draining the accounts, hiding the truth, betraying not only his trust but the very foundation of what they had created together. For months he was consumed by thoughts of justice. He replayed legal battles in his head, imagined confrontations, dreamed of revenge. But one afternoon, as he sat in a quiet park, he realized something profound. The partner had taken his money, but not his mind. And in that realization, the fire shifted. He stopped chasing retribution and started investing in education. He devoured books, sought mentors, rebuilt not from bitterness, but from clarity. His second venture was born stronger than the first, structured with safeguards, rooted in wisdom, resilient to deception. Years later, when asked what changed, he answered calmly, "I let the betrayal sharpen me instead of shatter me." This is Stoic alchemy, pain becoming raw material, obstacles transforming into opportunities. But it doesn't happen automatically. It requires conscious action. 4 steps, repeated with discipline, can turn any wound into wisdom. 1. Look straight at it. Do not deny the betrayal. Do not sugarcoat the failure. Call it by its name. What you refuse to face, you cannot transform. 2. Extract the lesson. Ask, what does this teach me about people, systems, or myself? The wound becomes wasted if no lesson is carried forward. 3. Optimize the system. Use the lesson to strengthen your structures, whether that's financial safeguards, emotional boundaries, or clearer principles. Make it harder for the same wound to strike twice. 4. Increase resistance. Don't just patch the hole. Build so strong that even future storms cannot break you the same way again. Follow these 4 steps, and the very obstacle meant to end you becomes the stone you step on to rise higher. The betrayal does not vanish. The loss is not undone, but it becomes your teacher instead of your tyrant. This is not theory, it is practice. Every Stoic knew that adversity was not a question of if, but when. The difference between those who crumble and those who grow is not fate. It is perspective. The one who sees an obstacle as an enemy suffers twice, once from the pain and again from the resistance. The one who sees an obstacle as a teacher suffers once and then is refined. If you'd like me to create a short obstacle way checklist, you can print and keep at your desk, subscribe to True Stoic Way, and comment obstacle below. That way, you'll always have the formula ready when life inevitably throws something heavy into your path. Because when you stop asking, why me, and start asking, how can I use this? The obstacle becomes the doorway, and through that doorway lies a greater strength than you had before. But before we can truly build something new, we must master the lens through which we see the world. Because if perception itself is distorted, even the strongest strategy will collapse. Which brings us to the next battlefield, your thoughts. The fiercest battles rarely happen in the open. They take place in silence, in the privacy of your own mind. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Epictetus reminded us, it's not events that disturb people, it's their judgments about them. The insult, the betrayal, the disappointment, those are events. But the storm that follows, that's your interpretation, your inner narrative replayed again and again until the pain feels fresh. Consider the story of a retired soldier. His body was home, far from the war, but his mind never left the battlefield. Sudden noises made him flinch, crowds made him tense. He trusted no one, because every shadow felt like an ambush. Though the war had ended, the war lived on inside him. One day he visited a monastery. A quiet monk listened to his story and said, "Do you realize you are still fighting battles that ended years ago?" Those words pierced deeper than any weapon. From that moment, the soldier began a new kind of training, not in combat, but in stillness. He learned to observe his thoughts without obeying them, to notice the fear without handing it the reins. Slowly, peace returned, not because the memories were erased, but because he stopped letting them command him. This is the battlefield each of us must enter, the war inside our own judgments. To fight it, you need tools, not weapons of steel, but disciplines of the mind. Here is a simple 5-step practice to master your thoughts when they threaten to run wild. 1. 3 breaths. Before you react, inhale deeply 3 times. This pause interrupts the automatic loop. 2. Name the emotion. Say to yourself, "This is anger," or "This is fear." Naming creates distance. You are not the emotion. You are the one observing it. 3. Ask, is it true? Challenge the first thought. Is it fact or just your mind racing? 4. Test the opposite. What if the exact opposite were true? Could there be another angle you haven't considered? This reframes the situation. 5. Take one small valuable action. Instead of spiraling, choose a step that adds value. A message of kindness, a note in your journal, a breath of calm. Redirect energy into something constructive. Practiced consistently, these 5 steps turn judgment from a tyrant into a servant. You still feel emotions, but they no longer drag you like a current. You learn to pause before believing. You learn to test before reacting. And slowly, your inner landscape shifts from chaos to clarity. The effect in daily life is powerful. Imagine entering a tense meeting and instead of being swept into others' drama, you remain grounded. Imagine hearing criticism and instead of snapping back, you respond with composure. This is not coldness, it's presence. It's the steadiness of someone who refuses to be drafted into emotional theater. If this practice resonates with you, and you'd like me to create a short guided audio, 3 breath plus label plus reframe, in just 2 minutes, hit like on this video so I know there's demand. Sometimes a voice reminding you to pause is all it takes to regain command. Because mastering your thoughts isn't about perfection. It's about refusing to fight battles that ended long ago. It's about reclaiming the authority over the only kingdom you truly control, your mind. And once the lens of perception is steady, the next step becomes clear. To write with full intention the values that will guide the life you build from here. When betrayal strikes, it doesn't just wound the heart, it shakes the framework of your values. You begin to question, what do I really believe about loyalty, love, trust, and worth? This is where many lose their way. Instead of rewriting their values with clarity, they allow pain to write them in fear. The Stoic path challenges us to pause and take inventory. One powerful exercise is what I call the 2-column practice. Take a sheet of paper. On the left side, write the values you held before the wound: honesty, trust, kindness, generosity. On the right, write what you find yourself believing now. Maybe it's never trust anyone, or love is always a trap, or kindness is weakness. Then step back and ask, which values are truly mine? and which belong to my pain. This exercise is revealing. Most of the time, the harsh new rules aren't wisdom, they're armor. And while armor can protect you in battle, wearing it every day eventually becomes a prison. You can't run, can't breathe, can't embrace life freely. Living behind cynicism is not strength, it's surrender to fear. Stoicism calls us back to living in harmony with nature. Not just the trees and rivers outside us, but our own nature within. A child is not born distrusting. A soul is not designed for bitterness. Our natural state inclines toward connection, toward openness, toward courage. Betrayal strips away illusions, yes, but it also presents a chance to decide consciously what deserves to stay. Think of someone who leaves a toxic relationship. At first, they may believe they are free, but if their new guiding principle is "I'll never let anyone close again," then the relationship still rules them, even in its absence. Freedom is not refusing to love. Freedom is choosing to love wisely, without letting fear hold the pen. So here's the challenge. Don't let pain dictate your values. Reclaim the pen. Write beliefs that reflect not who hurt you, but who you are becoming. Keep the values that align with your higher self. Integrity, courage, compassion. Discard the ones born from fear, suspicion, bitterness, withdrawal. Your values are your compass. And when that compass is clear, your life becomes clearer too. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop tolerating what confuses you. You begin to say no, not from fear, but from conviction. And more importantly, you begin to say yes to what truly aligns with your nature. If you're ready to solidify this, comment one value you've chosen to keep after your hardship. I'll read every single one, because naming your value out loud is the first step to living it. Because clarity of values doesn't just give you direction, it gives you protection. And that's where we go next. Boundaries, the lines you draw not to wall yourself off, but to honor and protect the values you've reclaimed. Epictetus once said, "No person is free who is not master of himself." Many hear this and think only of self-control, mastering impulses, taming anger, restraining desire. But true self-mastery also includes knowing where you end and others begin. It is the art of drawing boundaries not as walls of fear, but as definitions of dignity. A boundary is not a barricade. It's not a rejection of love or connection. It is simply a clear line that says, "This is what I will allow. This is what I will not. This is the life I choose to live." Without boundaries, kindness becomes exploitation. Without boundaries, loyalty becomes self-betrayal. With them, relationships can flourish without resentment or exhaustion. Consider the story of a young woman who spent years saying yes to everything. Yes to extra shifts at work. Yes to friends who only appeared when they needed a favor. Yes to unfair treatment in silence. By the end, she wasn't just exhausted, she had lost her voice. After a painful breakup, she realized the real damage wasn't just the betrayal of another, but the countless small betrayals of herself. So she set an experiment. 1 month of saying no to anything that did not honor her peace. At first, guilt pressed down like a weight. Every no felt like a crime. But then something shifted. She began to feel lighter, stronger, more herself. By the end of the month, she had not only reclaimed her energy, she had rediscovered her dignity. What changed her life wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. Boundaries are not about pushing people out, they're about keeping yourself in. They are the soil in which love, friendship, and work can grow without choking. Seneca advised, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." That is not arrogance, that is alignment. Choosing wisely whom you let close is not elitism, it's stewardship of your spirit. And you don't need long speeches to enforce a boundary. Sometimes the most powerful script is also the simplest. No thanks, that doesn't align with my priorities. No anger, no guilt, just clarity. Of course, some will say you've changed, and they're right. But your change isn't rooted in bitterness, it's rooted in memory. The memory of what happens when you let your lines blur until you disappear. Now, you honor yourself enough to stand firm. If this resonates with you, comment boundary below, and I'll put together a list of 10 short, respectful ways to say no without apology. Sometimes a sentence is all it takes to protect the values you've worked so hard to rebuild. Because boundaries are not barriers to life. They are bridges to a life lived with intention. They are the shape of freedom in practice. And even when apologies never arrive, even when justice seems delayed, the ability to live within your chosen lines ensures that meaning still lies within your grasp. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. It is a line that pierces through centuries because it exposes a truth most of us resist. The justice of the outer world is fragile, uncertain, and often delayed. But the justice of the inner world, that belongs to us alone. When you've been wronged, it's natural to crave an apology. You imagine the scene. They finally admit it. Their words soften. They say, "I'm sorry." And for a moment you believe that would heal you. But ask yourself the real question. If they said it today, what would I actually do differently tomorrow? For most of us, the answer is nothing. We would still have to wake up, breathe, choose our path, and live our lives. The apology changes little in practice, but waiting for it costs us everything. Freedom begins the moment you stop outsourcing your healing to someone else's remorse. The moment you stop saying, "I'll move forward when they," and start saying, "I'll move forward because I choose to." That is meaning. That is sovereignty. Living with meaning without an apology doesn't mean the wound didn't matter. It means the wound no longer dictates your pace. It means you find joy without waiting for permission. It means you build again, not because the past was fair, but because your future is too precious to remain hostage to someone else's silence. I once heard of a man who lost his brother over a lie. The truth surfaced years later, but no apology ever followed. The wound sat in his chest like stone. One day he admitted to a teacher, "I just want him to say he's sorry." The teacher asked quietly, "Would it change what you must do tomorrow?" The man lowered his head. "No." The teacher replied, "Then let that be your answer." That moment didn't erase the pain, but it loosened the chain. Because sometimes, the apology we crave isn't about justice. It's about wanting to feel seen. But here's the harsh truth. Some people will never have the depth to understand the harm they caused. And if you keep waiting for them, you suffer twice. Once from the original wound, and again from the waiting. So let me ask you, what if you stopped waiting? What if you chose today to live meaningfully even without their words? You'd laugh again without guilt. You'd create again without hesitation. You'd measure your worth not by wounds, but by the strength you've gained. If you're ready to stop waiting, share this video with someone still stuck in that place. You might be the spark that reminds them they don't need anyone's permission to start living again. Because meaning is not delivered in apologies. It is built in choices. And when you live that way, free, deliberate, unchained, you discover a truth greater than any justice the world can offer. You are already free. But freedom is not a one-time declaration. Like any muscle, it must be practiced, maintained, guarded, which leads us to the next step. How to protect that freedom and peace every single day. Freedom isn't won once and kept forever. Like strength, it must be trained. Like peace, it must be guarded. The Stoics never believed in one grand victory that solved everything. They believed in daily practice, small disciplines that, repeated consistently, build an unshakable fortress within. Think of your day as 3 anchors: morning, midday, and night. Each is a chance to reset, to reclaim, to protect your calm before the world's noise pulls you away. Morning, 60 seconds of direction. Begin your day not by scrolling, not by rushing, but by grounding yourself with 3 questions. 1. What is in my control today? 2. What limits of time or energy must I respect? 3. What will be enough for me today? These questions cut away illusions before the day begins. They prevent you from chasing what was never yours to control. They remind you that peace doesn't come from doing everything, but from knowing what is enough. Midday. The one-word check-in. At some point during the chaos of the day, pause for 30 seconds. Ask yourself, If I had to name my current state with one word, what would it be? Angry, tired, hopeful, calm. Whatever it is, say it silently. Naming is power. Then, take one breath and make a small adjustment. Maybe you straighten your posture. Maybe you slow your breathing. Maybe you close your eyes for half a minute. Tiny shifts realign your compass. Evening, the 3-line journal. At night before you close your eyes, write just 3 lines. 1. One thing I influenced or improved today. 2. One thing I chose to let go of. 3. One small act of kindness I gave. This practice builds closure into every day. It prevents you from carrying unfinished storms into tomorrow. Digital hygiene. And in between all of this, practice digital discipline. Turn off the sliding traps, endless notifications, doom scrolling, and the subtle drip of other people's chaos into your calm. You don't need to consume every voice to stand steady in your own. These drills are not complicated. They don't demand hours of meditation or perfect conditions. They demand only intention. Small acts of mastery that stack day by day until calm becomes your default. If you want me to create a printable version of this Stoic daily drill, you can tape to your desk or mirror. Comment "daily drill" below. Sometimes the simplest reminders are the ones that hold the greatest power. Because peace is not a theory, it's a practice. And when you guard it daily, you no longer live at the mercy of circumstances. You live from the strength of choice. And once you've reclaimed your sovereignty in this way, something powerful happens. You're no longer just protecting your own light. You're ready to share it, to connect more fully, to invite others into this steady way of living. Healing may begin in solitude, but it is sustained in community. The Stoics taught that we are not isolated islands. We are parts of the same whole. And while sovereignty over the self is the foundation, sharing that sovereignty with others multiplies its strength. There's something powerful about putting your story, even in its simplest form, into words. When you write, "I chose peace instead of anger," you're not just describing what you did. You're reinforcing who you are. Each sentence becomes a mirror that reflects your new identity back to you. I am someone who refuses to be defined by wounds. This is why community matters. Your words may be the lifeline someone else grabs in silence. You might never know who reads them, but your courage echoes. And in that echo, both of you grow stronger. Sometimes a single line is enough to anchor an entire shift in perspective. That's why I invite you to use simple declarations in the comments. Short, sharp truths that can live in your memory long after this video ends. My peace is stronger than any anger. Lesson greater than wound. Indifference is not equal to apathy. These aren't just slogans, they're anchors. Each time you write them, say them, or reread them, you're teaching your mind, this is who I am now. And as you share, you also spread. When you comment, when you like, when you tell your story, you become part of a ripple effect. Someone on the other side of the world may read your words and feel less alone. Someone quietly battling their own betrayal might see your courage and think, if they can rise, maybe I can too. So here's my gentle invitation. If this journey has spoken to you, subscribe to True Stoic Way. Like this video. And in the comments, write one sentence that captures your commitment. It doesn't have to be long. One sentence can change a day. One day can change a life. You'll be surprised at how much power lies in these small acts. Not just because they help the algorithm, not just because they grow the channel, but because they are rituals of identity. Every time you declare, I choose peace, you're choosing it again in your soul. The Stoic path is not about walking alone forever. It's about walking with clarity, then extending your hand to others. Your story, your sentence, your steady presence might be exactly what helps someone else stand firm. And now, as we draw near the end of this journey, it's time to bring everything together. To gather the lessons, the practices, the anchors, and seal them with one final step. A quiet promise to yourself. Because in the end, that is where it all rests. In the vow you make and keep with your own soul. Life will strike. This much is certain. None of us can prevent the betrayals, the insults, the losses that arrive uninvited. But the final authority is not in their hands. It is in yours. Because while no one can stop the blow, Only you decide who you become after it lands. That is the essence of Stoic strength. You've walked through anger, silence, forgiveness, boundaries, and daily practices. And at the heart of it all lies a single truth. The wound is not the end of your story. It is the soil. What grows from it depends on you. So let this be your silent vow. I will not let their act decide my character. Whisper it to yourself. Write it in your journal. Carry it in your breath. This promise is not loud, but it is unshakable. It is the line that separates you from those who tried to shape you with cruelty. Yes, the fire burned. Yes, it destroyed something precious. But fire does more than consume. It also clears. The old has been reduced to ash. The ground before you is bare. And in that bare ground lies your chance to build again. Stronger, wiser, untouchable by the same flames that once tried to undo you. This is your moment. Not to erase the past, but to rise from it. Not to deny the pain, but to declare that the pain will not have the last word. That honor belongs to you. If this journey has resonated with you, I invite you now. Subscribe to True Stoic Way to receive weekly Stoic drills that keep you anchored and steady. And in the comments, write the words, I choose peace. Let that sentence mark the day you reclaimed sovereignty over your inner life. Finally, share this video with someone who might be carrying their own silent battle, because your act of passing it on may be the very rope that helps them climb out of their darkness. You are stronger than what happened. And from this day forward, you walk not as a prisoner of betrayal, but as the author of your own calm, deliberate, unbreakable story.